Hey friends, Elizabeth here from Plant-Based Bride, back again with another Plantmas video for you all. Today I'm setting up a bit of a niche notebook that may not apply to all of you, but for those of you who are also into sewing, as I am, I hope this will be interesting for you. And even if you're not into sewing, it's possible that this setup will give you some ideas for setting up a journal of your own for a different hobby. So who knows, maybe it will give you some inspiration. So in today's video, I'm setting up a sewing journal. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you may know that I grew up sewing and recently got back into it when my parents gave me my own sewing machine for my birthday a couple years ago. I started by making the dress I wore to my sister's wedding as her matron of honor, which was a bit of a overzealous first project, I would say, although it did turn out pretty nice, so that's good. I've made a few projects since then, but I haven't had a chance to sew since we've moved, and I'm really excited. Once Plantmas is over and I take my 2-week break from work, I'm going to be sewing up a storm, and I'm very excited. So I decided to set up a sewing journal to keep myself on track, to make sure I didn't forget any of my project ideas, and to make sure that I use up my entire fabric stash, which is overflowing in my home office closet. There's literally not space for anything else, so I need to get on it and use all of this fabric before I'm tempted by any more sales, and I'm really excited for it. So hopefully this sewing journal will keep me on track. I'm using this white vegan leather B5 size Ampersand notebook from Archer & Olive. This is not one that they ever sold. It was an exclusive notebook that they gave to those of us on the design team, and I think some affiliates based on some criteria that I don't remember. It's really beautiful. I didn't know what I was going to use it for because I am just generally a super clumsy human and white objects don't tend to do well around me. But I hoped that a sewing journal that's going to live on my desk at home, that is being used for a hobby that is not nearly as messy as many of my other artistic hobbies, hopefully a white journal would be able to survive. So I suppose we'll see. I decided to make this journal pretty simple, pretty minimalist. I didn't want a huge amount of color and design art going on. I wanted it to be easy to keep up with and maintain and use regularly. So keeping it pretty simple here, just a thin black border and my header sewing journal. And then on the opposite page, I have traced this figure of a woman. This is from a set I purchased on Etsy, whose intention is for use by fashion designers and sewists, hobbyists who like to sew. I'll link the specific shop and the specific item that I purchased in the description box if you want to get them for yourself. I liked these particularly because they weren't quite as stretched, incredibly thin and long, as a lot of these fashion forms tend to be. I liked that this was a little bit more of a realistic body shape. The proportions were more possible for an actual human being. So this is the one I chose. I really like them. I knew I would not be able to draw a proportionate, simple outline of a human repeatedly without it taking a huge amount of time. So I decided to just purchase them for my own personal use. And these ones are really nice. I ended up deciding to add a little needle at the end of the L of journal so that it would look like the word journal was stitched. I thought that was a cute little, detail. So flipping to my next spread, I am starting on my practical spreads in my sewing journal. I have a My Makes spread on the left, and on the right is project ideas. So for My Makes, I have 3 columns here, a place to track every project I complete. So I have the date finished in the first column, project description in the second column, and then the third column is a place to rate the project from 1 to 5 stars, taking into consideration how hard or easy it was to make, how long it took me, how expensive it was, and also how much I like the finished garment, how well it fits, how glamorous I feel wearing it, how proud I am of myself having made it, all of those things. On the opposite page for my project ideas, I again have 3 columns. I have concept, pattern, and fabric. So the idea for this spread is to have a place to keep track of every project idea I have, whether the idea is just a concept, whether I found a pattern I want to make, or I bought a fabric with no plan, they can all go here. For example, if I know I want to make a cape, but I don't have a pattern in mind. I don't know what fabric I want. I just know I want to make a cape. Then I would write cape in the concept column. And when I eventually find a pattern or figure out what fabric I want, I can fill out the other columns. Same thing if a project idea comes from finding an awesome vintage pattern, for example. I can write down what the pattern is in that column. And then when I eventually find fabric or finish my conceptualization of what this project is or what I'm going for, I can fill out those other columns. And same thing, if I find the fabric first, I can eventually find a pattern or come up with a concept for that fabric. And hopefully this way I will never forget a project idea and also be able to take a project idea from something incomplete, maybe a little nebulous, into something actionable that can actually be created. Flipping over to my next spread, on the left I have measurements and sizes. So this is a practical spread so that I can know what size pattern to purchase. A lot of patterns come in a size range, so you need to figure out which range you fit in to know which pattern to get, but you can also find patterns that are just one size. So having my measurements and sizes on hand so I can quickly figure out which pattern I need is super helpful. Now, I kind of struggled with whether I wanted to include this spread or not, just because I have a bit of a complicated relationship with body measurements. As someone who has struggled with body dysmorphia and had a history of an ED, body measurements can be pretty triggering for me. So I was kind of on the fence about using this spread until I realized that maybe it would be easier for me to have them all written down and kind of divorce the numbers from my body, see them in a more abstract way. Hopefully this will be more comfortable for me, and also it means that I don't have to continually measure myself over and over again. I can just refer to the spread, all my measurements are there, and the measuring itself is sort of the most triggering part for me. So hopefully this will be a little bit easier. I don't know how relatable this is to most people, but if you've ever struggled with body dysmorphia or had an eating disorder, you probably can relate to what I'm talking about here. It's a bit complex, but body measurements are just part of sewing your own garments. I try to think of every measurement that I would potentially need making my own garments, but if I missed something that you think is important, please let me know in the comments because I don't want to forget anything important. On the opposite page, I just did a really simple fabric wish list so that I can try to be more intentional when a sale pops up instead of just wildly buying everything that's mustard yellow or rust or olive green. Flipping to the next spread, which is my project spread. So this is going to be the spread that I create every time I start a new project. It's going to be the hub for everything related to that project so that I can stay organized and be prepared for the future if I decide to recreate that pattern. So on the left side, this is all the information, anything I could possibly need to know. So I have my project description at the top, and then I have my pattern name, version, and size under that. Then I have a list of supplies where I can track when I have purchased them, as well as how much they cost, and a place for the total so that I can figure out how much this project cost me all together with all of the supplies. Under that, I have a section for a fabric swatch, so I can cut out a little piece of fabric and staple it or glue it in here so that I can have that for reference. And under that is fabric details, so a place to write the makeup of the fabric. Is it 100% cotton? Is it linen? Is it a blend? What's the makeup of the fabric? As well as the care instructions. On the other side of the page, I have a huge section for notes. This is for writing down anything that I alter or change, anything that I find challenging or have to adjust while sewing. So if I decide to lengthen the inseam by 1 inch, or if I reduce the seam allowance by 1/4 inch, or maybe I decide to swap out the sleeves for the sleeves in a different pattern or get rid of them altogether, this is where I put those notes so that when I'm making the pattern in future, I can remember what I changed. And under that, my last little section here is for the settings on my machine, length and width of the stitch, tension, all of those little details. On the opposite page, I'm using these forms that I purchased from Etsy, and I'm drawing the form from the front and the back so that I can sketch the garment. And under that, I have a section for the date that I started the project and the date I finished. You definitely don't have to include a section where you sketch or design your garments as you go. But for me, this was such an essential part. This is one of my favorite things about sewing as a hobby. It really brings me back to my childhood because my mother was really good at drawing just a very simple female form. So I would beg her to sketch one for me, and then I would go use my dad's scanner and print like 100 pages of it. And then I would just sit at my little craft table and draw ball gowns and cute little matching sets and little party dresses and just, fun low-rise jeans and crop top outfits because it was the 90s. Just so much fun. I have so many memories of designing clothes, so I definitely wanted to include that part as well. And now we're done. So doing a quick little flip through here of all the spreads I set up. Super simple, hopefully super easy to use. The only thing that's going to be more time consuming is creating this project spread every time I start a new project. But I kind of like it for that reason, not only because it has so much information that I know I'm going to want to have in the future that I can keep all in one place, but also because the fact that it is a bit more time consuming, that it is a bit more intricate, hopefully will mean that I will go into projects with more intention. I will choose one that I'm really excited for and that I'm willing to work on until it's done, see it through, and really be committed to each project instead of starting 5 or 6 projects all at once and then taking months to finish them and just having pattern pieces lying all over my office. Not that that's something that's ever happened to me. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, whether you are a sewist or not. If you do have your own sewing journal or have had thoughts of making one, I would love to know what you include and what you don't. If you've tried things and shifted things, what works for you, let me know all that stuff in the comments. I would love to know. Thank you so much to our patrons for your support. If you want to join the squad, feel free. There's a link in the card and in the description box down below. And I'll see you really soon tomorrow in our next day of Plantmas. Bye, friends.